Single dad Cowboy bought 18. Year. Old girl sold by her stepmom. He never expected she would fall in love. Hello everyone, before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It is quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let us return to our main character. The rain fell hard across the small Texas town, drumming against the tin roofs of barns and truck beds. The air smelled of dust and thunder. At the edge of a worn-out rodeo ground, under the crooked sign of a traveling auction, a girl stood trembling beside a woman with painted lips and cold eyes. Her name was Lila Carter, 18 years old, pale from hunger. Her wrists bruised by the rope that kept her from running. The woman beside her was her stepmother, Darlene, who once called herself family but now called her debt. "Who will take her?" the auctioneer shouted, his voice rough as gravel. "She is young, strong, and knows her chores." No one moved. The thunder cracked overhead. Lila closed her eyes. For the first time, she wondered if dying might be kinder than being sold. Then a deep voice cut through the noise. "I will." Every head turned. A man stepped forward, tall, broad-shouldered, his hat pulled low against the rain. Cole Walker, ranch owner, father, and widower. His boots sank into the mud as he handed the auctioneer a folded check. The crowd whispered. Some smirked. Others pitied him. When the papers were signed, Cole turned to Lila. "You are free now," he said quietly. "No one will touch you again." She stared at him, not believing. "You bought me?" "I bought your freedom," he answered. "But if you want to stay safe, there is only one way this will hold up with the law." He took off his wet hat, his eyes steady and tired. "You will have to marry me." Lila's breath caught. "Marry you?" "Only on paper," he said. "No touching, no strings, just safety. You can leave in 6 months if you wish." For a long moment, the thunder filled the silence between them. Then she nodded slowly. "Fine, but do not think I am grateful for being bought." He gave a faint, sorrowful smile. "I would not want you to be." That night, they signed the marriage license inside a small county office lit by a single bulb. The clerk's pen scratched across the paper. When it was done, Cole slipped a plain silver ring onto her finger. It was too big and cold, like the life that now waited for her on his ranch. Outside, the storm kept raging, washing away footprints but not the choice that would change both their lives forever. The rain stopped before dawn, leaving the earth soaked and smelling of wet hay. When the first light touched the horizon, Lila stood on the wooden porch of the Walker Ranch, her thin arms wrapped around herself. The wide land stretched endlessly before her rolling fields, fences that disappeared into the mist, and a barn painted the color of rust. She had never seen so much space, and yet felt so trapped. Cole stepped out from the stable, his boots heavy with mud, his hat pulled low. "Breakfast is on the table," he said quietly. His voice was deep but not unkind. "Maggie gets up early, so eat before she finishes it all." She turned, wary. "Maggie?" "My daughter," he answered. "She is 7. She will not bite." Inside the small ranch house, the air smelled of coffee and wood smoke. A little girl with long braids sat at the table, swinging her legs and humming to herself. When she saw Lila, she froze for a second, then grinned. "You are pretty," she said matter-of-factly. "Are you my new mom?" Lila almost dropped the cup in her hand. "No, sweetheart," she murmured, unsure what to say. "Just someone helping your dad for a while." Cole looked away, his jaw tightening. The silence that followed was heavy, broken only by the crackle of the fire. Lila kept her eyes on her plate, pushing scrambled eggs around with her fork. The first days were hard. The ranch was alive before sunrise, horses whinnying, wind cutting through the dry grass, dogs barking at the gate. Cole gave her chores that were simple but endless. Feed the chickens, clean the porch, help Maggie with her reading. He never raised his voice, never smiled much either. He worked with quiet precision, the kind of man who carried his grief like a secret weight. At night, when the lamps flickered low, Lila would lie awake in the small guest room, listening to the house breathe the creak of wood, the faraway hoot of an owl. Sometimes she heard Maggie talking in her sleep. Sometimes she heard Cole pacing in the next room. The loneliness inside the house was a living thing, moving through the walls like wind. One afternoon, Maggie came running, clutching a torn sketchbook she had found in Lila's bag. "Did you draw this?" she asked, eyes wide. Inside were soft pencil sketches of horses, fences, and a girl staring at the open sky. Lila blushed. "It is nothing, just old drawings." Cole leaned over her shoulder. The lines were rough but full of feeling. "You are good," he said. "You should keep doing it." "No one pays bills with drawings," she replied. He met her eyes for a moment, something unreadable flickering there. "Maybe not," he said quietly, "but it reminds you who you are." That night, Lila placed the sketchbook on the window ledge. The wind rustled its pages, turning them one by one until it stopped on a sketch of a small house with a light in every window. She traced it with her finger and whispered, "One day." Over the weeks, something changed between them. Cole began leaving an extra cup of coffee on the table in the mornings. Maggie started waiting for Lila to braid her hair. The ranch, once silent, filled with small sounds of laughter again. Yet under it, all lay an unspoken truth. She was still the girl he had bought. One evening, as the sun dipped low over the pasture, Lila saw Cole repairing a fence post, his hands steady, his face lined with weariness. She wanted to thank him for saving her, for giving her shelter, but the words would not come. Instead, she walked over and handed him the sketchbook. "You were right," she said softly. "It does remind me who I am." He looked up, eyes meeting hers beneath the fading light. "Good," he said. "Do not ever forget that, Lila. Not even when the world tries to make you." And for the first time since she arrived, she smiled without fear. In that quiet Texas evening, among the scent of hay and dust, something fragile but real began to take root, a kind of peace neither of them had known for a long time. The wind had grown colder by the end of that week, rolling across the Texas plains with the promise of another storm. The ranch sat quiet beneath a gray sky, and Lila stood on the porch with her sleeves rolled up, hanging Maggie's clean clothes on the line. The rhythm of ordinary life had begun to shape her days, but deep inside, she knew this peace was fragile. Cole had drawn up the rules on a folded sheet of paper the night after their wedding. It was not a love letter. It was a list clear, cold, and precise. Rule 1. Keep the marriage quiet. Rule 2. Do not enter his office. Rule 3. New touching, new questions, new personal talk. Rule 4. After 6 months, she could leave. No strings attached. He had placed the list on the kitchen table without looking at her. "These rules are for your safety and mine," he said. "I will not control your life, but I expect you to respect my boundaries." Lila had nodded, but every word of that list had burned into her mind like a brand. Now, as she pinned the last shirt to the line, she saw Cole walking from the barn, his shoulders stiff beneath his brown jacket. He had been quieter than usual lately, almost restless. Maggie's birthday was coming soon, and Lila had overheard him on the phone arguing with someone from the bank about the ranch's debt. "Hard day?" she asked when he came up the steps. "Hard life," he said, half smiling. "But nothing I cannot handle." He was about to walk past her when she spoke again. "You saved me, Cole, but you do not save yourself. You live like every day is a punishment." He stopped, staring at her for a long moment. "Maybe it is," he said. Then he tipped his hat and walked inside. That night, Lila could not sleep. The wind howled against the windows, carrying the faint sound of rain. She got up and wandered through the dim hallway. A door stood slightly open at the end, the one she was told never to enter. Cole's office. Her hand hovered over the knob. Curiosity and worry battled inside her. Then she pushed it open. The room was dark, except for a single lamp burning over a cluttered desk. Papers, photographs, and old books were scattered everywhere. On the wall hung a framed picture of a woman with bright eyes and a warm smile. Maggie's mother. Beneath the photo, a half-finished letter lay on the desk, its words smudged by tears. "I promised I would keep you safe, Mary, but the house feels empty without you." Lila's chest tightened. For the first time, she saw not the cold cowboy who had bought her freedom, but a man drowning in silence. She stepped closer, brushing dust from the picture frame. "She must have been kind," she whispered. I thought I told you never to come in here." Cole's voice came from the doorway, low and rough. He stood there, rain dripping from his coat. His eyes flicked to the letter on the desk, then back to her. "I am sorry," Lila said, her voice trembling. "I did not mean to—" He cut her off. "This room is not for you. None of this is for you. You are here because of a contract, nothing more." "Ah." The words hit her like a slap. She stepped back, her throat tightening. "I know," she said quietly. "But maybe you do not have to keep reminding me." He turned away, jaw clenched, guilt flickering across his face. "Go to bed, Lila." When she returned to her room, the sketchbook on the nightstand caught her eye. She opened it and, without thinking, began to draw his face, the eyes weary, the mouth drawn tight with pain. When she finished, she wrote one sentence beneath it. "A man who saves others, but forgets to save himself." Outside, the rain came down harder, washing over the fields, the barn, and the lonely ranch house that now held two hearts bound by a contract, divided by silence, and tied together by something neither of them could yet name. And somewhere deep inside her, beneath the fear and confusion, a thought began to bloom. Maybe this marriage was not only about rules. Maybe it was a story waiting to change both their lives. Morning came soft and golden after a long night of thunder. The storm had cleared the air, leaving the sky wide and bright over the ranch. Lila woke early, the smell of fresh hay and coffee drifting through the window. The argument from the night before still echoed in her mind, but so did the look on Cole's face when he saw her standing in that office. It was not just anger she had seen, it was sorrow. By the time she stepped into the kitchen, Cole was already there, pouring coffee into 2 mugs. He said nothing for a while, then placed 1 cup in front of her. "You draw well," he said quietly. "Maggie told me you made her a picture of her pony." Lila blinked in surprise. "I did. She asked me to." "She liked it," Cole replied. "She has not smiled that wide in a long time." The silence that followed was easier than usual. Outside, the sun hit the wet grass, and light spilled across the wooden floor. For the first time, it felt like the house was breathing again. That week became a rhythm of slow change. Cole began to invite Lila to ride with him into the pastures. At first, she hesitated, afraid of the horses, afraid of him. But Maggie laughed and begged until she agreed. Soon, every afternoon, they rode out together under the wide Texas sky. Cole taught her how to hold the reins, how to listen to the animal's rhythm, how to trust her balance. "You do not fight the horse," he told her one day. "You move with it, like a promise you keep." She smiled at that. "You talk like a poet for a man who mends fences." He gave a small laugh, the first she had ever heard from him. "Do not tell anyone. It would ruin my reputation." The weeks rolled by, bringing small but steady changes. The girl who once flinched at every shadow now sang while she worked. The man who once spoke only in commands now lingered to ask, "How was your day?" Yet even as the laughter returned, both of them knew the line drawn by that paper contract still stood. Every night, Lila folded the silver ring on its chain beside her bed, a quiet reminder that what they shared was not meant to last. One afternoon, the local fair announced its annual Harvest Gala. Cole was invited as one of the sponsors. Maggie was thrilled, begging him to take them both. He hesitated but finally agreed. "We will just go for the food," he said. "Nothing fancy." But when the evening came, and Lila stepped out of her room in a simple blue dress Maggie had helped her choose, Cole forgot how to breathe for a moment. She looked nothing like the frightened girl he had met in the rain. She looked free. Maggie clapped her hands. "Daddy, you have to tell her she looks pretty." Cole cleared his throat. "You look fine," he muttered. Lila laughed softly. "That is the nicest thing you have ever said to me." Under the warm lights of the Harvest Gala, they moved among neighbors and friends. For the first time, people saw them not as a strange arrangement, but as something real. Cole found himself watching her laugh, seeing color return to her cheeks, hearing Maggie's joy fill the room. In that moment, he realized something dangerous and beautiful was happening. The rules were beginning to blur. The walls he had built were starting to crack. And though neither of them said it aloud, both felt it. This was no longer just a contract. It was the quiet beginning of something that could change everything. The Harvest Gala glowed with lanterns strung high above the wooden barn, the scent of roasted corn and apple pie filling the air. Music drifted through the crowd, and the laughter of townsfolk mixed with the creak of boots on the old floorboards. Cole stood at the edge of the room, one hand in his pocket, watching Lila dance with Maggie near the band. The little girl's braids swung as she twirled, and Lila's laughter rang clear and light. It was the sound of something he had not heard in years home. When the song ended, Maggie ran to fetch lemonade, leaving Lila standing beneath the warm string lights. Cole hesitated, then crossed the floor. "You dance better than I expected," he said. She smiled. "That is not a compliment, but I will take it." He almost smiled back. "Thank you for making her happy," he said softly. "I did not think anyone could." Lila looked up at him. Maybe she just needed someone who remembers how to smile. Their eyes held for a moment longer than it should have. Then a voice broke through the music, a reporter from the local paper, holding a notepad. "Mr. Walker, the town is curious. People are saying you married that girl after meeting her at an auction. Is that true?" The music dimmed. Conversations faltered. All eyes turned toward them. Cole felt the weight of 100 stares pressing down. For a heartbeat, the old instinct to lie, to deflect, rose in his throat. But when he looked at Lila, standing still with her chin raised, he saw courage. He took her hand. "Yes," he said clearly. "I did. But I did not buy a wife. I bought a second chance to do right." The crowd murmured. Some nodded. Others whispered. But the truth had been spoken, clean and unashamed. Later that night, as they rode home under the stars, Lila sat in silence on the wagon bench. Finally, she said, "You did not have to tell them the truth." Cole's hands tightened on the reins. "Maybe not. But you deserve honesty, even if it costs me." She looked at him, her heart heavy and warm all at once. For the first time, she began to believe that this man, the cowboy who once bought her freedom, might have given her something far more valuable than safety. He had given her dignity, and perhaps, without meaning to, his own heart. The next morning, the ranch felt different. The air carried the hush that always followed a storm of truth. Word from the gala had already spread through town. Some called Cole a fool, others called him a hero. Cole did not care about either. What haunted him was the look in Lila's eyes when he said those words. "I bought a second chance to do right." She had not spoken much since they returned home. That silence lingered through breakfast and over the chores that followed. By noon, she was in the barn, brushing Maggie's pony, when he finally approached her. "I did not mean to embarrass you," he said quietly. She kept her eyes on the pony's mane. "You did not. You only told the truth." Cole nodded, unsure what else to say. The truth had set something loose between them, something neither of them knew how to control. That evening, after Maggie had gone to bed, Lila stepped outside. The sky was painted in deep gold and violet, the kind of sunset that could make a person forget their pain for a moment. Cole was sitting on the porch steps, sharpening a small pocket knife, his eyes distant. "You look tired," she said, sitting a few feet away. "I have been tired for years," he answered with a faint smile. "It is a habit now." Lila studied him. The lines on his face looked softer in the light. "You do not have to carry everything alone," she said. He looked at her, startled by the gentleness in her voice. "It is not your burden." "Maybe not," she said. "But maybe that is what families are for, to share the hard parts." For a long time he said nothing. Then, slowly, he reached into his jacket and pulled out a small locket, tarnished by age. He opened it and showed her a faded photograph, his late wife, Mary, holding a baby Maggie. "She died in this house," he said quietly. "It was winter. I could not save her. I swore I would never care again because caring felt like losing." Lila's eyes softened. Loving someone is not the same as losing them. It just means they mattered. He met her gaze, the words sinking deeper than he expected. For a heartbeat, the walls around his heart cracked open. He reached for her hand but stopped halfway, hesitating. Lila placed her fingers over his. "You can stop punishing yourself now," she whispered. A gust of warm wind moved through the fields, carrying the scent of sage and rain. In that moment, something shifted. The contract that once defined them no longer felt like chains but a bridge, fragile, uncertain, yet real. When she stood to leave, Cole's voice stopped her. "Lila," he said softly, "thank you." For what?" "For reminding me that life can still be kind." She smiled, her heart unsteady but full. "You just had to let it in." As she walked back inside, the house felt less like a shelter and more like a home. For the first time, neither of them feared what tomorrow might bring. A few peaceful weeks passed, quiet and golden, until the calm began to crack. It started with a letter. One morning, while Cole was out checking the northern fence line, a sleek black car pulled up the dirt road, kicking dust into the air. A woman stepped out, sharp heels, red lipstick, the kind of polished cruelty that made the ground seem to shrink beneath her. It was Darlene, Lila's stepmother. She carried a newspaper folded beneath her arm. On the front page, bold letters shouted the headline, "Local rancher admits to buying bride." Darlene smiled without warmth. "Quite the story, sweetheart. I always knew you would end up famous for all the wrong reasons." Lila froze on the porch, her heart pounding. "Why are you here?" "Because you owe me," Darlene said. "You think a little cowboy contract makes you clean. I made you. I can unmake you." She leaned closer, her perfume sharp as poison. "Unless, of course, your husband pays to keep me quiet." Cole returned, just as Lila's voice began to shake. "You need to leave," he said, his tone hard and even. Darlene turned to him with a sneer. "You are brave, Mr. Walker. But I have documents that say otherwise. Bills of sale, signatures, proof that this little deal of yours was never about saving anyone. How would the law see it, I wonder?" Cole's hands clenched. "You forged those papers. Can you prove that?" she asked sweetly. Then she looked at Lila. "Or will you finally admit you were part of the plan all along?" The words hit Lila like a whip. "That is a lie," she cried. "You sold me to pay your debts." Darlene laughed, high and cruel. "Try telling that to the sheriff." Before Cole could answer, she tossed the newspaper onto the porch and walked back to her car. "You will hear from my lawyer," she said. The engine roared to life, and the car vanished in a trail of dust. The silence she left behind was heavier than any storm. Cole picked up the newspaper, his jaw tight. "She cannot win," he said. But Lila's eyes were full of fear. "People will believe her. You saw the way they looked at us at the gala. They will think I tricked you." Cole did not answer. That night, he barely spoke. The next morning, he left early for town. When he returned hours later, his face was hard as stone. "She filed a claim," he said quietly. "The sheriff wants to talk. Until this is cleared, they may suspend my license to trade cattle. The ranch could be frozen." Lila's stomach twisted. "What can we do?" Cole looked away. "You can leave. You should, before this gets worse." "I will not," she said. "This is my fight too." He turned sharply. "No, it is not. You are a good girl, Lila. But this was my mistake. I thought I could fix the past by saving someone. I was wrong." His words cracked something inside her. "So that is it? You regret saving me?" Cole's silence was the only answer. She stepped back, trembling. "I understand. You want to protect me, but you are only pushing me away." He looked at her, eyes dark with conflict, then walked past without another word. That night, as the wind howled through the empty fields, Lila packed her sketchbook and the silver ring and left the house. She did not know where she was going. Only that staying would break her heart worse than leaving. Inside the dark ranch house, Cole sat alone at the table, the letter from the sheriff in his hand, the ink blurring where the first tear fell. The storm outside was nothing compared to the one rising inside him. 2 days passed with no word from Lila. The ranch felt hollow, without her the kitchen cold, Maggie quiet, the air too still. Cole rode through the pastures each morning, pretending to work, but his eyes kept drifting toward the road, hoping to see her figure appear in the distance. On the third night, rain began to fall again. He sat at the kitchen table, the sheriff's notice lying open beside a cold cup of coffee. Every headline, every whisper from town, all of it pointed to the same cruel story. Cowboy buys a girl. He had meant to save her, but now it looked as though he had trapped her in shame. Then headlights cut through the rain outside. Cole grabbed his coat and stepped onto the porch. A pickup truck rolled to a stop, and a familiar figure stepped out, his friend, Deputy Frank Miller. "Cole," the deputy said, shaking off the rain. "You need to see this." He held out a folder of documents sealed in a plastic bag. Inside were the original records from the auction house, the same ones Darlene claimed to have destroyed. Only these were different, clear evidence showing that Darlene had forged the sale papers, transferring property that never existed. "Where did you get these?" Cole asked. "Your girl," Frank replied. "She came into town last night, said she had been digging through her stepmother's storage unit. She found these and left before I could stop her. Said she was heading to the courthouse in the morning." Cole's heart kicked hard. "Alone?" Frank nodded. "You better hurry. Darlene's lawyer is already there." By the time Cole reached the county courthouse, the storm had turned violent. Lightning flashed across the sky as he ran up the marble steps. Inside, the courtroom buzzed with voices. At the front stood Darlene, dressed in her best clothes, dripping false tears. And beside her, Lila, soaked, pale, but standing tall. The judge pounded his gavel. "Order." Lila held up the folder. "These are the real documents," she said, her voice trembling but strong. "They prove that my stepmother forged the sale and used my father's old debts to take his land. She did not just sell me, she tried to erase me." Darlene hissed, "You liar." The judge silenced her with a glare and began to read. As the truth unfolded, the room grew still. When he finished, he looked up at Cole. "Mr. Walker, it appears your so-called marriage was never a crime. You acted in good faith. The forged records will be handed to the district attorney for investigation." Darlene's face drained of color as the deputies moved toward her. "You cannot do this to me," she shouted, but no one listened. Cole crossed the room and stopped beside Lila. She looked up at him, tears mixing with the rain still clinging to her hair. "I thought I lost everything," she whispered. "But all I wanted was the truth." He shook his head. "You never lost it. You just had to fight for it." As Darlene was led away, the crowd began to murmur, not with judgment this time, but with quiet respect. Lila turned to the judge and handed over the last page of her sketchbook, showing a drawing of the Walker Ranch bathed in sunlight. At the bottom, she had written one line, "Freedom has a face now." Cole took her hand gently. "Let's go home," he said. Outside, the storm was breaking apart, the clouds splitting to reveal a strip of blue sky. For the first time in a long while, neither of them looked back. They rode away together through the wet fields, toward a place that finally felt like their own. Spring came quietly that year. The fields around the Walker Ranch turned green again, and the air filled with the scent of wildflowers and new beginnings. Months had passed since the trial, yet the memory of that stormy courthouse day still lingered in Cole's mind, how Lila had stood, soaked and trembling, and spoken her truth with the courage of someone who had finally stopped running. The town had changed its story. People who once whispered now waved when they passed by the ranch gate. The newspaper printed a new headline: "Young woman clears her name, exposes family fraud." For the first time, Lila's name was not tied to shame, but to strength. Life settled into a gentle rhythm. Maggie grew taller, always asking Lila to help with her homework or to braid her hair before school. Cole found himself watching them from the porch sometimes, wondering when laughter had become the ranch's new heartbeat. He still carried his quiet ways, still spoke little, but there was a calm in him now, a kind of peace that had taken root where grief used to live. One evening, as the sun melted into the horizon, Lila stood in the corral sketching. The horses grazed nearby, their shadows long across the dust. Cole walked over, wiping his hands on a towel. "You have been at it for hours," he said. "What are you drawing this time?" She smiled and turned the pad toward him. It was the ranch, bathed in light, the house standing strong with 3 figures on the porch: Cole, Maggie, and herself. "I am drawing what home looks like," she said. He stared at the picture for a long moment, his throat tightening. "You make it look better than it is." She shook her head gently. "No, I just draw what I see." He looked at her then, really looked, and something inside him settled. "I once promised I would let you go when this was over," he said. "You have your freedom now. You can do anything you want." Lila's eyes softened. "I know, but freedom does not mean leaving. It means choosing where your heart feels safe." Oh, for a long moment, the only sound was the wind moving through the tall grass. Then Cole reached into his pocket and pulled out the silver ring that had once symbolized a contract. "When I first gave you this, it was to protect you," he said. "Now, if you will take it again, it will be for love." Lila's eyes filled with tears. "You sure you are ready to love again, Cowboy?" He smiled, a real smile this time. "I think I already have." Under the fading light of that Texas sunset, she nodded. He slipped the ring back onto her finger, and it fit perfectly, as if it had been waiting all along. From the porch, Maggie's voice carried through the evening. "Daddy, Miss Lila, dinner is ready." They laughed, walking back together toward the house. The door swung open, spilling warm light into the dusk. As they stepped inside, the narrator's voice returned, soft and steady. He thought he was saving her life, but in the end, she saved his heart. Because love, when it is real, is never bought, it is earned, one act of kindness at a time. And somewhere in the stillness of that Texas night, the sound of laughter rose again, gentle, free, and full of promise.